Well, and I think one of the things that's really interesting around your organization, around the idea of IdeaScale is, you talk a lot about getting the democratization of ideas. And, whether it's solving technical debt or whether it's a new marketing campaign, it's really the idea of democratizing the process, allowing input from all levels and building a stronger buy-in with a company. Talk to me a little about where did that idea come from?
Sure. And let me just clarify. So, what our software does is it allows you to collect ideas from pretty much anybody within the organization or even outside of your customers, your shareholders, and let the best ideas rise to the top. Very similar to how social media platform lets the best posts go up. So, I've had the good fortune of being with IdeaScale for about 2 years, but I didn't actually come up with the great idea to form IdeaScale 15 years ago. That
Mm.
credit goes to two gentlemen, Rob Hamoen and Viv Paskar.
And welcome back to the Money, the Mindset, and the Mentoring podcast. Today, we have Nick Jain with us. He is here from IdeaScale. And man, your story is one of the most impactful stories I've heard in a long time. In Canada, we've had a massive rush from India of immigration. And a lot of times people dehumanize the immigration that happens. They just see this mass of people that just come to the country and are completely changing the ecosystem. But I can tell you that when I hear your story, and if the change that you can make in people's lives is the change that happens to the ecosystem, I'm signing on board, because what you've done in your life and the way that you've contributed, I think is just absolutely amazing, especially given where you came from. So Nick, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you again for having me on the podcast, Steve. I'm really excited to be here.
Now, Nick, you grew up in a tier 3 city in India, and it's about 2 hours of electricity every day. You had you get water twice a day, and that's sort of where you grew up. And now you're running a tech company and a multinational tech company. That's a big change. How did that experience of your youth shape your opinion of business and how you run your business today?
So, yeah, look, I had a very typical developing world childhood till I was about five. And I think that's impacted me in two or three ways. Number one, it's taught me humility for like a lot of the success I've been able to achieve today is driven by lots of people contributing to my success over many years, right? My parents, my grandparents made tremendous sacrifices. I had the good fortune to go to a really good high school in Canada. Like the fact that Canadian government invested a lot into education was really valuable. So I benefited from like the sacrifices, the taxes, the community that I grew up in Canada, and then like lots of people throughout my career. So it's like an appreciation for success is not just an individual accomplishment, but is often, at least for me, has been driven by lots of people contributing over decades to where I've ended up. That's number one. Number two, it's taught me the value of hard work, right? We often underestimate what really, really hard work is. If somebody, in high school, I used to work construction 9 to 5 and be, sweaty and tired at the end of it. And I thought I was tired, but then you see what, folks in other parts of the world go through. And then you understand like, hey, that's the meaning of like real fatigue. I never had to go through this, but I've seen, folks in villages in India where they actually have to walk something like 20 miles a day. And that's just part of their daily routine, in addition to the 9 to 5 or really 9 to 9 that they're working, right? And so that's taught me like what the meaning of hard work is. And even to this day, right, whether that be my professional life or my family life, I'm still putting forward a lot of hours because I believe that I see that my competitors are in other countries, even within this company. And I have to be willing to work those 60, 80, 90-hour weeks because A, I value that work, but B, I see that folks in other countries certainly are, and we need to stay ahead in what we do.
I think most people want to get the result. They don't want to put in the work. And we see that a lot with people who look at across the pond of the person who's making that money, who's creating that success, but they don't look to the work that actually took to actually get there. What advice would you give somebody who has that big idea in them, similar to what, but has limited resources, and sort of similar to what you grew up on? What would you give them advice that you would give that person?
Sure. So first of all, again, come back to hard work. Like if you get in life what you put into it, right? If you're not willing to work hard, it's very hard to achieve the types of goals you want, whether that be in your love life, whether that be in your professional life, whether that be in your investing life. So don't be afraid of hard work, because if you are, just remember that someone else is willing to outwork you, outcompete you. That's number one. Number two is if you do have a great idea, you can actually have it realized into value without, even if you come from very scarce resources. And that's because we're very fortunate in like Canada, the United States, a lot of Western countries to have very good capital markets. If you have a great idea, you'll find an investor out there to back you, right? You can, we've all heard of the, thousands of Silicon Valley technology companies that are started by founders who are college students or come from, all over a crazy place in the world. And there's venture capitalists who listen to them. Their entire business is to listen to them, find the cool ideas, and give people the resources to turn these into $1 billion ideas. And they can do that even if you're coming from very humble backgrounds. And that's a really cool privilege that we have if you're living in a developed capitalist country.
Absolutely. I think we sometimes don't even realize how lucky we are to live in North America and in the Western culture. I know you were raised by your grandmother, and your grandma was really somebody who thought generationally, was I think looked after, I think what you said was about 4 generations, and really was inspiring. I think the story was very inspiring about hearing what she's done for you. How did that environment influence you to be able to spot a good idea in unexpected places?
Sure. So I think 2 things. Number one is the ability is really focusing on the long term, right? My grandmother took care of 4 generations of people across 80 or so years. That's thinking in terms of decades or in terms of, lifespans or generations of people. One of the things that's sometimes really difficult when, I run a company, I have to think about making weekly payrolls or thinking about the quarter, reporting to my board annually. Sometimes that becomes too easy to focus on the quarter, the month, the year, reporting to boards, and not thinking about the long term. But there's a lot of opportunities that take a long term to develop. A really good example of this is for the past 2 years, everyone's been talking about ChatGPT and OpenAI and all these AI tools. But ChatGPT was basically doing nothing but just purely doing research for something like 8 years. They didn't have a single dollar of revenue for like 8 years, and they spent all that time just working really hard, thinking ahead, not a quarter, not a week, not a month, not a year, but literally like 10 years ahead. We're going to crank out this research, and then we're going to have this amazing product. So I think the ability to think much, much longer term and continue to invest in something when you really believe it and have the evidence to show for it is something that comes, by virtue of the upbringing and the sacrifice that my folks make for me.
What long-term things are you thinking about for your business?
Sure. I think I'll give 2 examples. One is for IdeaScale, and then one is kind of in my own personal investing life. So for IdeaScale, one of the things we are really focused on is making long-term investments in the product that aren't obvious today. So a classic example is if for a software, every software has some bugs. Most software companies don't actually invest a lot in their product quality or bugs because salespeople can't sell low bug software. That's not something that people get excited about in your sales pitch, right? But it does show up. So you don't get any revenues for it today. Customers don't comment on it today. But if you think about over the next 3-4 years, you lose fewer customers when your software just works and is not buggy. So we actually invest a ton in high quality software, even though it doesn't generate sales today, because we know it's going to yield benefits 3 to 5 years down the line. The second is in my personal life, I've started doing some real estate investing recently. And that's, for anyone who's done anything in real estate, it's often a long-term game where you have to be thinking ahead 5, 10, 30 years about, okay, I'm going to build a portfolio of assets and either sell them off to fund my retirement or hand them off to my kids. You have to be thinking about tax structuring. You have to be thinking about investing in those properties. And that necessarily focuses you to think not about the month or the quarter or the year, but like 10, 20, 30 years ahead.
Yeah, and that's something that I had a podcast a little while ago around the idea of technical debt. And a lot of companies, as they build out, because they're building so around speed of release of features, that they just inherit a lot of these challenges that eventually have to be solved, and they always get swept underneath the rug because it's as you said, it's not exciting. It doesn't, shareholders don't jump up and down saying there's no technical debt in your product, so you're good. But that idea of having that foresight that eventually you're going to have to solve that big Leviathan ahead of the game is really having that foreshadow to say that you're looking really to the long term.
We definitely spend about a third of our resources on reducing the amount of technical debt. It's a never-ending game, but we're always investing behind actually, keeping the backlog as minimal as.
Well, and I think one of the things that's really interesting around your organization, around the idea of IdeaScale, is, you talk a lot about getting the democratization of ideas. And, whether it's solving technical debt or whether it's a new marketing campaign, it's really the idea of democratizing the process, allowing input from all levels, and building a stronger buy-in with a company. Talk to me a little about where did that idea come from?
Sure. And let me just clarify. So, what our software does is it allows you to collect ideas from pretty much anybody within the organization or even outside of your customers, your shareholders, and let the best ideas rise to the top, very similar to how a social media platform lets the best posts go up. So, I've had the good fortune of being with IdeaScale for about 2 years, but I didn't actually come up with the great idea to form IdeaScale 15 years ago. That
Mm.
credit goes to two gentlemen, Rob Hamoen and Viv Paskaran. And their insight, what came out of actually something President Obama did about 10 or 15 years ago, which was President Obama realized the government was very antiquated. We had organizations, multi-billion dollar organizations within the government that had been around for 200 years, still doing the same thing they were doing in the 1800s. And President Obama was like, we need to be more innovative. And how do we do this? We need software and technology that was very 21st century. So Rob and Viv saw this opportunity that, hey, we need to form an organization that helps large, complex organizations innovate in a more systematic manner. That's where IdeaScale came out of, really the government's imperative to be much more innovative. Since then, we've expanded significantly into the private sector as well. But the idea was large, complex organizations usually suck at being innovative. Let's actually give them a proper tool set to do that more effectively.
It was interesting when I listened to a podcast with Lex Friedman talking to Jeff Bezos. Lex asked him about, what really was one of the most important things in their business. And he said was speed to decision. And even though they're just such a massive organization, that ability to be able to make decisions quickly and to see ideas and then capitalize on those, that was something he seemed very proud of. Is that something that you see that's really important for organizations to jump in on?
Yeah, so when I was in business school, one of the military guys had mentioned this philosophy called an OODA loop. It was how they trained Air Force pilots back in World War II, which was observe, orient, decide, act, which is kind of like a quick process. And the idea was, even if you have worse planes, if your OODA loop or cycle time is shorter, you can react better than the enemy pilots in a dogfight. So if you can observe what they're doing, if you can orient yourself and understand what's happening in this three-dimensional field that you're fighting in, make a decision and then act on the decision. If you're acting, completing that cycle better than other people, you outcompete them. In business school, they showed us like that same philosophy applies to almost any area of life. It could be one-on-one boxing match. It could be in big corporate strategies. If you're able to observe, orient, decide, and act faster than your competition, you can do that consistently and repetitively. You're just going to crush the competition in almost any sphere of life.
Now, when we put the idea of that together with the idea of really formulating ideas where you're almost like, when you think about the idea of your generational approach, where I'm thinking so long term, but yet I'm also looking at making a decision today. How do we reconcile those? Because the long term thing sometimes makes a little bit more thought, whereas that instant I'm in a dogfight needs that instant action. How do we reconcile those two decision making
Sure. So I don't
processes?
think they're that far away, right? Like the thinking long term just means, okay, am I going to evaluate something just by the impact it has on me today or over the next 10 years? Let's use having, a chocolate bar, right? You can have a chocolate bar and make a decision on having a chocolate bar today because it gives you instant gratification, happiness, but may have a negative health impact on you, 10 years from now if you eat a lot of chocolate or a lot of candy. You also know it may cause you a sugar crash 3 hours from now. So you have that same chocolate bar. You can still make a decision right now, but think about the impact it has on you in the next 5 minutes. You'll feel very happy. 3 hours later, you'll have a sugar crash. And 10 years later, you may have a cavity or, heart disease, right? Obviously not one chocolate bar, but many chocolate bars repeatedly. And you may make different decisions on that. You may say, okay, I'm going to have this one chocolate bar because I don't think it's really going to impact my life, quality of life in 10 years. But if you make that same decision, 100 times a week where you're eating 100 chocolate bars, you're going to be like that guy from the Super Size Me movie, where his heart and his health got really messed up by eating nothing but McDonald's for a year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we've all made those decisions. My weakness is ice cream, so I will
That's my
always
wife's
come to
too.
that one. Dude,
we
it's
live
just,
across from the best ice cream shop in Philadelphia, and so that's a real problem.
that would be terrible. I would literally be on the Super Size Me thing. I would 100%. I'm lucky that it's at least, they closed the Dairy Queen that's at least close to us. So I have to go a distance now, about 20 minutes to get good ice cream. So at least I'm safe from that perspective. So now, when when we look at companies, when we talk about, great, we're gonna come up with these ideas, whether they're short term or long term objectives, and we're gonna try to solve those and put them into effect. What strategies have you found most effective to get people to feel connected to an idea, whether they're part of a small team or a global community?
Sure. So at IdeaScale, I'd say, and this is, I think we try and run with best practice, and this is what we recommend to our customers and clients as well. The first is let ideas stand on their own merit, regardless of where they come from, whether they come from someone senior, someone with a funny accent, someone who's, in a blue collar job. Let everybody realize that ideas, regardless of where they come from, are valuable, and we value the greatest ideas extraordinarily well here. That's number one. That gets people excited because they know they matter to the organization, regardless of where they sit in the organization. Number two is you actually have to turn those ideas into reality. People react really positively to that. And I'd say number three, do that consistently. Make that a core value of your system or your organization. And I actually had a fourth one, like make your decision-making process clear. Like what are the goals of your organization? If you are a private, like for IdeaScale, there's a very simple math equation with 4 letters that defines how software companies should run. So there's 4 numbers in there, and everyone in the company knows that whatever they do, whether they're a software engineer, whether they're in sales, whether they're in marketing, whether they're in finance, their job is to move those 4 numbers in certain directions. And if they're not being impactful to the company. And when we make a decision, we make it very clearly like, okay, this idea or this decision impacts these factors within the 4 numbers, or it doesn't. If it doesn't, then it's a stupid decision. If it does, it better move the formula in the right way. It's literally that simple. How does this idea impact one of these 4 numbers? That's all that matters for software, as silly as it sounds.
So, and I want to hit those 4 numbers in a minute, because that sounds like you've given me a little bit of a hook there. But I really want to not drop the idea around what you talked around ideas and the meritocracy of ideas, not the source of where the idea came from. So when we're looking at that, when we judge about meritocracy, are you saying, do you blind label where the idea comes from so that there's no bias when you're looking at idea? Is that a principle that you follow, or do you actually know the source of where it came from when you look at it?
So you can do both, right? So for example, within our software, you can make everything anonymous or you can make everything transparent. You would intuitively think that making everything anonymous works better because people don't care. But in any well-functioning organization, turns out it doesn't matter. I'm the CEO of the company and I see my ideas downvoted all the time, right? Even though it's got Nick Jain next to my name next to it, people still downvote it. So turns out anonymity doesn't, you would think it makes a difference, but it really doesn't. In any well-functioning organization, people feel comfortable enough to say, this is a dumb idea. I don't care if it comes from the CEO or my boss's boss. It's a dumb idea and I'll vote it down, and that's okay because our organization values my input and the right decision over Nick's ego.
And well, the second thing, does that mean that Sally in accounting gets a demotion if she downvotes Nick's?
Absolutely not. No. So firstly, we've made it voting anonymous, at least for our internal application. But even if I know, right, like I have people publicly commenting with their names that, hey, Nick, your idea is wrong because of X, Y, Z. And thankfully, I have the humility to know that's okay. But secondly, that's the greatest thing possible for an organization where my employees feel comfortable saying, this is a crappy decision. Don't do it. Right? And it's never hurting me. She's not insulting me personally. She's saying this is a bad idea. And that's okay because I, as an individual, can separate my ego from an idea. Everyone makes mistakes, and that idea is a stupid idea. And then conversely, hopefully once in a while, I come up with good ideas too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you've really done when you look culturally is you've really created a culture of, I won't say non-conformance because that's not the intention, but it's almost a culture of conflict. And not conflict in the sense of non-productive, but conflict in the form of actually productive conflict, where, it's almost the Hegel's dialectic of, thesis and antithesis produce synthesis. And I think that's an interesting culture to really foster.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. My predecessor, Rob, helped set it up and I've continued to build upon it. But for lack of a better word, the product I sell is how do you get the best ideas in front of you. And if you are selling that product, you very much have to believe it, which we do in-house, and we try and live by that best practice. That ideas really matter, but you have to have a culture or a process that lets good ideas flow to the top.
Now, the other thing you said about the meritocracy and around the democratization of creation of ideas, but then you closed off with the idea of having performance metrics. You talked about the 4 performance metrics for a software business. Number one, how do you, when you're looking at soft ideas, how do you put metrics to that? When you look at hard ideas, how do you put metrics to that? And give me that secret sauce for those software
Sure.
companies.
So the secret formula for any software company, it's not secret, almost, you can look it up on Wikipedia, is the formula is revenue divided by 1 minus the net retention rate plus the discount rate, all times the profit margin. It's called the lifetime value or enterprise value formula for a software company. And there's a similar formula whether you're running a trucking company or a shoe company. You can go look it up on Wikipedia or any finance textbook. People have known this for a long time, right? But for a software company, I care about my revenues, my profit margin, my net retention rate, and my discount rate, which is basically like my interest rate. Now, that's the secret formula. That's basically how much stuff your company's selling, how profitably is it selling, is it keeping its customers, and how much interest is it paying, to simplify it down a little bit. To go to the first half of your question, how do we think about soft versus hard ideas? I'm a big believer, for right or wrong, that if you can't measure it, it's not real. And I believe that in every aspect of my life, whether that be my fitness or my running. Am I getting healthier? I don't know. Well, I know. I know because I was really slow at running about 2 months ago, and then I started running almost every day, and I've improved my mile time by about 10 or 15%. So I know I'm fitter than I was, 8 weeks ago. I know I've lost a couple of pounds. So like I measure it, and that same philosophy applies to how we run IdeaScale. We try and quantify everything. Nothing is fuzzy, right? When we think about marketing, we don't just think of brand value. It's like, okay, how many leads did we generate? How much buzz did we generate? How does that buzz translate into conversion rates? On engineering, we don't just say this is a good quality of software because somebody feels good about it. It's like, what's our bug rate? What's our mean time to failure? What's our mean time to resolution? So we measure all that. And that can be true of most, if you apply that philosophy to ideas. Every idea, no matter how qualitative, should have a goal. That goal could be to make people feel better, but you have to measure how you made people feel better. Otherwise, you don't even know. You could have made people feel worse. There's lots of crazy things that happen in the world where you think it's going to have impact X, and it actually has the exact opposite negative impact. Like it has negative X, and a lot of people don't know they're doing counterproductive things because they don't measure. At IdeaScale, we try and measure, and we encourage our clients to measure things, even things that most people think are qualitative.
I agree. I think there needs to be, even with a qualitative statement of, customer satisfaction. Well, how can you make that tangible, right? Is it 5-star reviews? Is that your measurement? Is it attrition rate? Is that your measurement? Anything that's sort of something where it could be made obtuse can be very precise once you start putting in some sort of metric to it. So then you can say, good or bad, or even is the metric wrong? Maybe the metric isn't right. And the solution comes that you need a better number. Mm-hmm. And I think the idea of attaching quantitative to every qualitative statement, that not seen a case where that hasn't been true.
Yeah. Like, again, I truly believe that everything in life needs to be measured. Maybe not love or something, but like anything in the world of business, if you don't quantify it, it's not real.
Yeah. But love can be measured. You can quantify that. How many date nights have you gone on?
I actually personally do believe I can, but I don't think my wife would appreciate me trying to quantify love.
Well, yeah.
So actually, I had a professor in college, David Blanchflower. The area that he became famous for is he went and quantified all the crazy things people don't quantify. So he went and quantified the value of a happy marriage. That's his famous paper.
And who is that? What was the name?
His name is David Blanchflower.
David Blanchflower.
So he's a British guy. He actually left halfway through my college semester because he got elected to the Monetary Policy Committee. That's like the UK's Fed. So very prestigious post. But his fame is he quantifies all the things in life you think would be perhaps better left unquantified, right? So the value of a happy marriage is something like adding $100,000 a year for life to your family income, which is a lot of money if you think about it, right?
Yeah, so for sure.
Happy marriages are worth a lot.
Well, it's interesting because you look at that and it was written by a guy who now is in you said it, basically it's the Fed
exactly. He's no longer there, but like this was 10 years ago. But yeah, he left halfway through college because he got this, the opportunity to go run the economics of an entire country.
Which again goes back to, you can learn things, both in from a lot of different places, formal, informal, that sort of thing. In fact, like I know you yourself, you had a pretty good education journey where you went to Dartmouth and Harvard, but then you put that with you're doing summers when you were younger in India, kind of connecting with your roots of really going out and doing really hard things. And the duality of those experiences where you look at your youth to where you're later in life, how did that formulate the perspective of learning formal and informally to really build your innovative mindset that you got today?
Sure. So a few things, right? And not the Asian mindset, I would say, if I, at the risk of speaking for 3 billion people, place a high emphasis on the value of education, both as a moral good and as a practical advances your life, career, wealth, etc. Right? So a large reason that I've invested so much in my education was that was deeply like inbred into me that education is important, both because it makes you a better human being, but also because it helps you get a better job. And that's a wonderful kind of feeling where you're both making yourself like spiritually better off as well as economically better off. That's one of the reasons why I worked my butt off to get into good universities and do well there. But it's also why I continue to invest in continuing education today. I spend somewhere between 10 to 30 hours a month like on taking more courses, more certificates, not because I need more certificates against the wall. In fact, I don't even pay the fees to get these certificates, but rather for the knowledge because A, it's fun to learn, but B, I know if I'm not learning out there, my competitor CEOs certainly aren't. I'm falling behind, right? Like I have this deep positive sense of paranoia that if I'm not getting ahead, someone else certainly is.
Absolutely. I think, especially once we put in the kerosene of AI into the system, we're looking at things moving at a speed like we've never seen before. And we've had the conversation around if a company isn't constantly learning, it probably is really regressing.
Mm-hmm.
And from your perspective, how do you take what your belief is of that continuous learning and bake that into the DNA of your company's culture?
Sure. So a few things. Number one, we pay for our employees to take as much continuing education as they want to, right? So it's literally we have a pretty much unlimited budget. If a sales and marketing person says they want to take a sales training course, an engineer says we want to go take this engineering course, we do that. And I, in fact, personally took like some ChatGPT AI engineering course. I went on to our general Slack channel and said, "Hey guys, I highly recommend this. Everyone in the company should go take." Everyone's using ChatGPT, but how many people have actually studied how to use it effectively, like taken actual courses on it? Because you'll learn some really cool, powerful, tips and tricks. I encourage everyone in the company to do that, but we also have just a carte blanche budget for people to take continuing education, whatever their fields of endeavor are. That's number one. Number two is we're constantly throughout the company sharing ideas on how to make each other better. Like, hey, I discovered this cool new technology, you should use it. Or, hey, we are changing our code base from X to Y. When an engineer says that, and I'm not a trained engineer, when they say that, I'll go read about it, myself because hey, this is something cool that I should learn and know about. Maybe it not be relevant to me today, tomorrow, even 5 years from now, but it will be relevant at some point. And then finally is I think we place setting aside the education aspect, I think we place a strong emphasis on the fact that you need to continue improving both as an individual and as a company, because if you're not, like, again, our competitors are. Right? So we need to be smarter, faster, stronger today than we are tomorrow, or sorry, tomorrow than we are today. Otherwise, we're falling behind or regressing, in your words.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know for you, you've really worked tirelessly to really not only instill this into the company, but really you grind, man. Like at 60 to 90 hours a week, you've got your business, you've got the real estate business with your wife, you're starting to build out the family. As you said, you run, and you're still constantly pushing that state of innovation. It's always interesting to see what sort of is that the fuel that keeps you to run at that pace?
Sure. So I had a boss who once said, everyone says they're too busy to do something, but no, being busy is just saying you've prioritized something over something else. And that could be sleep. You've prioritized sleep. It could be you've prioritized your kids. And that's okay. For each individual, their priorities in life are different. For me, I generally enjoy doing all the things that I do, right? So I enjoy running. I'm not running because I want to lose weight or because I want a six pack of abs. I'm running because it's fun. It's my meditation, right? I work my butt off for IdeaScale for two reasons. Number one, that's my obligation. When you take the CEO job, you have a fiduciary and legal obligation to your employees, to your customers, to your shareholders. But then secondly, I just enjoy building things, right? Like I feel really good about the fact that my company has grown headcount by 25 or 30% over the last couple of years, whereas the average tech company's fired people. I feel really good knowing that I helped create jobs and create employment for people. That's a good feeling. That motivates me in life. So look, I work my butt off, but that's because I'm choosing to prioritize the things in life that give me joy, right? Which is I like building things. I like running. I like spending time with my wife. I'm a big poker player. I like doing those things. There's other things in my life I don't do, right? I don't watch a lot of pro sports because that doesn't give me, a lot of joy in life. I'll watch the occasional like Eagles game, but really that's not my cup of tea. So,
Mm-hmm.
I spend less time watching TV than the average person, not because I'm trying to, save time to use wasteful. It's just, it doesn't give me as much joy as like playing a game of poker, for example.
Yep. Yep. And I agree. I think a lot of times when people say I'm too busy, it's just saying it's not a priority right now. And that's something that anybody ever says that to me, that's the first thing that goes through my head is they're saying it's not a priority.
Which is
And to
okay,
be
by the
able,
way, right? Like even
yeah,
at work.
totally. Totally. Now, looking back on your journey for everything that you've done within the business and personal, speaking about ideas, what's the weirdest, sort of most unexpected place that you saw a great idea come from? Or what's just a really weird idea that came in that was really interesting to see?
So this isn't specific to IdeaScale, but there's this really difficult problem in logistics. Like, okay, you have all these countries in the world that don't have great roads, that don't, may not have trucking systems or train systems. How do you get stuff from point A to B? And point B may be a village where they literally, it's like, 10 people and a dog, right? Living there. And somebody wanted to figure out like, hey, how do you, figure out how do you get stuff from A to B? And they figured out one of the few things that gets everywhere in the world, no matter how isolated that place is, and that's matchboxes. Turns out, even if you're living in a place without electricity, you still need to light fire. And the easiest way to light fire is matchboxes or matchsticks, because they're super cheap, they're super light, they can be carried on somebody's back, right? And everybody needs fire. It's the one thing most of humanity has had in common for like 20,000 years now, right? And so the cool idea that I read about, this is like 5 or 10 years ago, was to figure out how do you get goods to like these really isolated regions. Just follow the path backwards of how they got matchboxes there. So they went to shops in random remote villages and like tops of mountaintops, and just followed backwards. How did a matchbox get up there? And that's how we're going to reverse engineer that and get Coke there or chips there or other things. Because the same guy who's carrying these matchboxes to this remote village can grab a couple cans of Coke or Lay's or Lay's chips. And that has now just dramatically increased the market potential of our product. And that, again, could be cans of Coke or could be some, life-saving medicines.
Yeah, cans of Coke or life-saving medicines. I'll pick the life-saving medicines. I think
So
that
would I,
would
but
be
I'm saying
fantastic.
that I'm sure the people. Well, I'm sure the people who did this probably did it for more Coke than life-saving
They
medicines.
probably did it for
But it
more
was
Coke or Pepsi reasons.
such a great
100%.
insight that everyone needs fire. Going back to like that primordial need that, like, regardless of where in the world or how many thousands of years you look back, everybody's had fire, and like we still want to light fire today.
From matchboxes to distribution chains, from India to Canada to the United States, you've had such an absolutely amazing journey. I love your focus on democratizing ideas, creating a meritocracy, using that to really foster a great culture of innovation within your organization and within organizations that you work with. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast today and really develop an idea on ideas. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you again for having me, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Now, one of the things I thought was really great with your company, I know this is a shameless plug for you, but the idea is IdeaScale, you can actually, as a smaller company, get a copy of it for free. And you just log on and, if you're not a big multinational, you're a small company, you just want to foster some growth, you can actually just go and just get it for free. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah, so obviously our customers are large, complex organizations that have thousands of employees all over the world. But if you're below 100 people, our software is entirely free. Whether you're a solo entrepreneur with a Gmail address or you're a small hardware business, whatever it is, just go to ideascale.com, click Get Started Free. It takes less than a minute to set up, and it's all online, so you don't have to download anything. You can do it on your phone, and our software is totally accessible and free. We encourage you to use it.
So from 60 to 90 hours a day, from going to sleep to go get water twice a day, to creating a company that gives away software for free to people under the size of 100. Man, again, what a great story. Nick, thank you for joining us here at The Money, at The Mindset, at the Mentoring Podcast. We'll see you guys on the next one.